Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. I'm Randy Wright, and I'll be your captain on this solo flight special edition of our state-of-the-art radio program. Folks, this will be the final boarding call, so if you please, claim your seats, fasten your seatbelts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show while I go ahead and delve into the pre-flight checklist, as there really is a lot of news and information to get to before I may fully indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we can see that things are going from bad to worse for the former campaign director of Donald Trump's presidential campaign throughout the course of the 2016 presidential election cycle. Paul Manafort now finds himself under indictment by special counsel Robert Mueller. Now, it is important to stress at this current juncture in time that this is not directly related to the actual Russian allegations with respect to high-ranking members and officials of Trump's campaign as to the election itself. This roots out of business dealings that Paul Manafort had along with his business associate Rick Gates in years past. But what it clearly demonstrates, beyond a shadow of the doubt, is that the special counsel is not strictly limited to the sort of information or concerns that initiated the appointment of a special counsel in the first place. He is free to go wherever the great weight of the evidence leads him, and it would certainly appear that where this evidence has led him is directly to going in front of a grand jury and indicting the former campaign manager and director of Trump's campaign. So what does this all mean in regards to everything that has been unfurling and swirling around this entire controversy? Well, first and foremost, it doesn't mean that we are anywhere near actually having anything relating to Donald Trump himself being connected to the Russian probe, although there are certain things like Patalopoulos, or whatever that guy's name was. It was George Patapoulos, or however you pronounce that, had pleaded guilty to not being forthright with agents of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, or FBI, and that he had not been forthcoming with the information that he had told certain people from an unnamed informant that they had potential dirt on Trump's electoral opponent in Hillary Rodham Clinton. But what all of this tells me is that the claims that Trump made time and again throughout the campaign trail of that disastrous debacle and fiasco known as the 2016 presidential election cycle, of hiring the best people, of surrounding himself with nothing but the best people, isn't necessarily true. Because if that was the case, then why was Manafort, who had been engaged in these rather seedy and unscrupulous business dealings for years now, allowed to get past the initial layers of scrutiny? That's something that I think inquiring minds would like to know. It's certainly something I would like to hear an explanation to. It's something I would like to see come up to the epicenter so that we can have a clear understanding of just exactly what transpired and how this is impacting the land of the free and the home of the brave. But I'm not going to hold my breath on that. The political kabuki theater that has been created by both sides of the political aisle with regard to this issue and with regard to running the country in general has been anything but decent. It has been anything but convincing. And it's unfortunate that we find ourselves in such an untenable situation, because it tells me beyond a shadow of the doubt that there will continue to be obfuscation of the truth. But all of these distractors, or alleged distractors, that are going to continue to swirl around and surround this situation and scenario certainly leaves me puzzled. It leaves me puzzled as to what exactly was known, by whom, and at what point in time. Because we definitely need to take this seriously. We definitely need to be cognizant and aware of whatever dangers could potentially have come forth here and have potentially, had a major impact on our entire electoral process. Again, none of this bodes well for the future of the land of the free and the home of the brave, and we should all be a bit concerned. But what this all centers around is that there are 12 charges which have been brought against Manafort and one of his business associates in Rick Gates that includes to launder money. Money laundering. Folks, this is disgusting. How is it that this has managed to make its way up into the upper echelons of our political system? Because one of the things that was said by some of the various people going out and discussing this and mulling over this is that Manafort was doing these foreign dealings because his services had begun to wane in the domestic theater and sphere. If that's the case, then why was he hired by Trump? Where was the vetting process? Because there is certainly an appearance of impropriety here, and that is something that we can't afford to ignore. It's not something that we can afford to just feel comfortable with either, because the more that this comes to this surface, and the more that this continues to be out there, the more damage that it's going to do to the gutless opposition party, or GOP, for those looming 2018 congressional midterm elections, which are just right around the corner. It is 1 year away. And make no bones about it, ladies and gentlemen, the frothing at the mouth, Fabian socialist, leftist-controlled Democrat Party will do everything within their power to make political hay out of this. That is just what they do. And they will sit there and think that they have the perfect opportunity to carry forth with that, to get away with that. And it's unfortunate that the Republican Party seems to be ham-handedly walking into this, that they seem to be empowering this. If there's one thing that the Republicans have always been terrible with, it's with message control and public relations. They have never been good with that. And this is just proof positive of that. They are bungling here. And again, it's one of the concerns that my first officer, Jeremy Graventon, and I brought up numerous times on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, throughout the course of the 2016 presidential election cycle. That it is our duty, obligation, but above all responsibility to properly vet our candidates. And we warned back then that this had the potential of becoming problematic later down the road, that it could cause serious harm to the conservative movement. And that's the deal. That's what's going to play out here. I've already seen the goalposts being moved once again in the annals of social media. I've seen the whole thing of the deep state conspiracy theory being flung around as if that is something that is real, as if that is something that is going to come to the surface and epicenter here. But why? Why would that be the evidence? Why would that be something that we would believe to be true when there is no direct evidence linking it to us, when there is no direct connections showing that it is real, or that it is a possibility, or that that is what is coming to fruition in the heart of the land of the free and the home of the brave? Without evidence, it's mere conjecture and idle speculation. And I'm not one who likes to engage in mere conjecture as well as idle speculation. I like to deal in the facts, to get to the truth, because as Scripture so poignantly put it, ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set ye free. Well, the only way we can know the truth is to go forth with the investigative process, and that is what's happening. That is why these first indictments are handed down. Now, just because they are not directly connected with the allegations of alleged collusion between high-ranking members and officials of the Trump campaign and later Trump administration, doesn't mean that it isn't being utilized for the purposes of that. If they have an offer of immunity special limited immunity on the table for Manafort and this Rick Gates guy, that means that they would have to tell them anything and everything they know regarding any prospective or potential dealings between members of the Trump camp and members of the Russian Federation. You see, this is part of dredging up the facts in order to build a case. But unfortunately, we know that the rank and file members of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media are not going to be reserved in their approach to this. They're not going to wait for the facts. They are spin doctors extraordinaire. And so they will do everything in their power to try and manipulate the narrative, to try and spin the narrative to fit a certain storyline that they've already prefabricated. And again, because we were sloppy in taking any steps to vet our candidate throughout the course of the 2016 election cycle, it's going to haunt us like a shadow. It's going to be there behind us. It is not going to relent. It's not going to let up. It is going to get worse and worse with each successive passing day that it is allowed to fester. And so what is going to happen to the trust that we have in our government, what little there is, and the inner workings of the upper echelons of our federal government in this beloved republic of ours? It's difficult to say at this current juncture in time. It's difficult to even begin to comprehend where this all could wind up going. But what is absolutely critical and imperative is that we try and stay as objective as possible with this and not just go run out there and claim that it's some aspect or attribute of the deep state. Because now you're starting to dance around an issue. You're starting to go forth with something that is not necessarily true. And if that is the case, and if we start appearing as though we are out of touch with reality, that we are, easily snookered into believing any type of conspiracy theory, any and every conspiracy theory that might come our way, then that also devalues our position as a political movement, ideology, and philosophy. And I believe that we can ill afford to allow that to come to fruition, particularly at this current juncture in time. Given the current political atmosphere and climate in these United States of America, it's going to make it all the more difficult for us to come together on those issues that are of vital importance. Issues such as securing our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. Issues such as reining in this out-of-control leviathan of an administrative state that is ultimately unaccountable to the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours, we the people of these United States of America. Those are the vital things that we have to keep in mind. That is what we should be placing a lot of weight and importance on. But as things stand at this current juncture in time, that does not appear to be what we're doing. That does not appear to correlate or connect with what is truly going forth in the heart of the land of the free and the home of the brave. And it's troubling, to say the least. But we have to always keep our minds open to the truth as it is out there, and to how this could impact us. And as for what's happened with Paul Manafort, that's just something we can't ignore. It's very bad, because the charges are about alleged concealments of payments from Gates and Manafort having business dealings in the Ukraine all the way up to the year 2016. Again, this should all be vetted before he's even allowed anywhere near the campaign of one of the front runners for the GOP nomination. And again, all of this is going to pay political dividends for the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftist controlled Democrat Party. They're already jumping at this. And yes, I know that there is the whole thing about the uranium deal and Russia and Hillary. I don't believe that anybody came to this party with clean hands. This shindig is going to throw the proverbial feces on both sides of the political aisle in these United States of America. I really don't think that there is a way we can escape that. I don't think that we can ignore that. I think that is exactly where things are lining up. And it's unfortunate because this should have been one of those warning signs, one of those red flags that should have been going up in the hearts and minds of the American people, but importantly, with the other staff and personnel of Donald J. Trump saying, hey, wait a minute. This guy has some rather seedy and questionable business dealings that could potentially come back and bite us. And in fact, that's why he was eventually pushed out, much as Corey Lewandowski had been pushed out when the proverbial hornet's nest of controversy had been blundered into and kicked down the road, and all of a sudden, these swarm of bitter, angry, venomous hornets were swarming around the campaign. Well, now it's swarming around the entire administration of the 45th President of these United States of America, Donald J. Trump. It is an inescapable truth. Yet it is where we find ourselves at this current juncture in time. And folks, it shows no signs of improving within the foreseeable future. This is something that's going to continue to linger on. It is going to get legs, so to speak, and that is not going to let up. That's not going to go away. The frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists and their friends and the rank and file of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media will do anything and everything within their power to make this have political legs. They will make it do whatever it can to cause as much damage and to discredit the conservative movement as much as humanly practicable and possible. That is what they always do. That has been their end goal and their modus operandi for over a century and a half now, folks. And that is certainly not about to change. So, we know that both sides are denying collusion. But when we see these sorts of things continue to fall into place, continue to rise to the surface, it does give a sense of impropriety. An ugly sense of impropriety. One that is simply unable to be ignored. Because try as they might to have it to where this is ignored, it's not going to go away. The Democrats are going to use this opportunity to make themselves look better. After all, it was not Hillary's direct campaign manager who was indicted, who had to turn himself into federal authorities this morning. It's the former campaign director of the sitting president of these United States of America. That is the impression that is going to be left. And it's the optics, particularly in modern American politics, that oftentimes matter more than reality itself. Again, that too is just one of those inescapable truths that's out there. It's one of those things that we are going to have to be prepared for. Because like it or not, that is the case that we're facing. That is the problem that is resonating before the American people, whether it be, in the annals of social media or traditional media, it's out there. It's what's being covered. It's what is going to be seen. So how do we even do damage control with this? I'm not even entirely certain. damage control would be effective in this. This is a public relations nightmare, a PR disaster on a biblical scale. And it could have been avoided. That's the part that gets me. And this is what irritates me a little bit about Donald Trump's tweet response to it. It's that he said, sorry, but this is years ago, before Paul Manafort was a part of the Trump campaign. But why aren't crooked Hillary and the Dems the focus? Because we already know that the salivating mainstream media has a bias towards the left. But for me, as I've always stated on previous episodes of our state-of-the-art radio program here, I'm harder on my own guys. I'm harder on the people that proclaim to be of my political mindset and ideology, because I want to ensure that my thoughts are pure, that my political movement is pure, and that we're not engaging in deflection. Deflection hurts us. It harms us. It works against us each and every time. And that is the problem that we're encountering right now. This thing is going to continue to fester. It's going to get ugly. It's going to get worse the longer that it goes forth. And I can almost guarantee you that this is going to linger well past those looming congressional midterm elections of 2018. Again, that is just one of these inescapable truths. It is one of those things that we're going to have to deal with sooner rather than later. But if we are ready, willing, and able to address this and to begin to deal with it, then we can basically walk back some of the damage that has been caused by this. We can engage in damage control, and that will allow us to begin to put the pieces back together. But it does not help us when the President of the United States continues to go forth into the annals of social media and make remarks like that. Because again, it's like speculation, or not speculation, but it's deflection. When you engage in deflection of that magnitude and of that scope and caliber, it automatically raises the ire of suspicion. What did he know? When did he know it? And why weren't some of these people that are now indicted better screened? And why weren't they scrutinized at the hiring process way before any of this got started? Because as Trump said there, this is years ago. Well, if it was years ago, then that means if you hire the best people and only surround yourself with the best people, you should have vetted this. You should have discovered this. Knew or should have known will be the legal standard that is applied. And that's an inescapable truth. That's something that they are not going to be able to just walk back. It's not something that we can just ignore. It's there. It's open and obvious, clear as day, for anyone who is approaching this under the totality of the circumstances, and most certainly with a modicum of objectivity, can see. So it's a foolish statement. And it is not bolstering the position of the president. I would have advised him not to go forth with that statement. But here's the thing. This BBC article that has covered so much of this goes on to say that for years, Paul Manafort operated on the fringes of power, a once influential Washington player who worked with some less than savory international characters because his services were no longer in high demand domestically. Why? If that is the case, then why was he allowed to be the direct campaign manager of Donald Trump for the vast majority of the electoral process last year? That is a question that needs to be answered. And of course, it's not one that's going to be answered. At least I'm not going to hold my breath on it, because I'd go blue in the face and die before I'd even get one iota of an answer to that question. Irrespective, it is still a question that needs to be asked, and it is one that I would like to see be answered. Mr. Manafort got his big break, but it may end up breaking him. The spotlight has drawn attention to Manafort's past dealings and raised questions about his actions while at the top of the Trump campaign. And you see, ladies and gentlemen, that's where the impact's going to be felt. That is how this is going to play out. It is not a good thing. It is not something that can be ignored, and it's not something that the mainstream media is going to let go of. Why are we attempting to reinvent the wheel? Why are we blundering our way through this still? It seems that the political kabuki theater gets worse with each successive passing day, and that we are not actually making progress on reining in this out-of-control leviathan of an administrative state that is working against the best interests of the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours, we the people of these United States of America. That's the problem. That's where we sit right now. And unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, this shows no signs of improving at any point within the foreseeable future. It's something that we are encountering. It's something that is going to continue to grow legs. And all of it for what? For what purpose? To what benefit do we, in our capacity as American citizens, draw from this ongoing brouhaha and poorly scripted soap opera or reality television program? To my mind, there's no benefit that we are deriving from this. And there most certainly isn't any benefit to be had from continuing to engage in this sort of chicanery, continuing to empower these rather seedy elements within the ever darker game of modern American politics. But the interesting thing is that this BBC report also points out that it certainly makes Mr. Trump's decision to cut Mr. Manafort loose last August after details emerged of his Ukrainian ties seem a wise one. Yes, in point of fact, perhaps. But I'm led to question, why was he hired in the first place? Was it a deal between Manafort and Trump and Manafort's former business associate with Manafort and Black, Mr. Black being the campaign director for John, my daddy's a mailman, Kasich? Remember, he didn't drop out until after Ted Cruz dropped out. Maybe, just maybe, there is collusions there, and not so much with the Russian issue. I don't know. But what I do know is that the appearance of impropriety and the great litany of claims all throughout the 2016 electoral cycle, going right back to the primary process, there were all of these claims by the now president, Trump, that he only surrounded himself with the best people, that he was a political outsider. But Manafort was the, exact and polar opposite of an outsider. He had been a political bigwig. He had been a major connection with all of the seedy elements of so-called establishment politics. So, again, that doesn't really play out for me either. It doesn't bode well for all that has been coming to the epicenter with this, and it's still a lingering problem. And I don't foresee it getting better. I just do not foresee this getting any better. But it really doesn't behoove us to just continue to dwell on it, because the longer it lingers, the more difficult it's going to be for the GOP to recover from this. And we all know that the Democrats are masterful at the art of making political hay out of this nonsense. And so, again, we just are not in a good space here. But one of the things that also comes up is that 3 Trump associates have been, according to David Varescos and Stephen Baker, as well as Shannon Pettypiece at Bloomberg, they said, sorry about that the federal investigation into whether President Donald Trump's campaign colluded with Russia took a major turn Monday as authorities charged 3 people, a former campaign chief, his business associate, and an ex-policy advisor, with crimes including money laundering, lying to the FBI, and conspiracy. Folks, this is almost like out of a primetime crime thriller. And again, it does not bode well for the chances of the Republican Party in these looming 2018 congressional midterm elections. And why do we just keep blundering into this? Or attempting to spin the narrative as though this is some amorphous deep state. Essentially a shadow government within the upper echelons of the federal government that is proactively attempting to unseat the president. I don't know. I think the president is doing a pretty good job of bungling this himself. Now, as my first officer, Jeremy Grapington, and I have oft-times reiterated on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, we certainly don't want the president to fail, because that would be rooting for the failure of the United States of America as a whole. And no, I don't want to see that. I do not wish to see that come to fruition in the heart of the land of the free and the home of the brave. But what I would like to see is some clarity come forth. To see some honesty and to see some accountability actually being brought forth and had. Because right now, I'm not, supremely confident that we are having accountability. That accountability is being discovered and is being put forth. Rather, it seems that we've just got more of the same, as we have time and again. And what good does that do us? The status quo with respect to this is not going to be beneficial to us. It's not going to help us get past these things. It's not going to help us get rid of the failed public policy positions and governmental programs of the disastrous 2 terms of the Barack Hussein Obama regime. It isn't. We're still there. We're now having fights about 401k funding. We're dabbling in more government intrusion into the facets of our daily lives. But because we have allowed the modern American system of polity to devolve into a mere spectator sporting event, it's just casting aspersions and pointing the finger of blame at others as this leviathan of an out-of-control administrative state continues to further set roots in the body politique of the land of the free and the home of the brave. And that is something that must come to a swift and immediate end. But the only way that it's going to come to a swift and immediate end is if we, in our individual capacity as United States citizens, are ready, willing, and able to come together, standing shoulder to shoulder in solidarity and unity, and putting our collective foot down and saying enough is enough. No, stop. But instead, the whole Russian thing keeps going forward. The bombacity that has been put on display by the 45th President of these United States of America continues unabated, unchecked, unchallenged. And where does it leave us? More divided than ever. But is that where we want to be, either as a nation or people? Do we want to be more divided than we have been? Because I know I've stated it before, we are more divided at this current juncture in time than at any other point in our nation's relatively brief yet illustrious history, save for the year 1860, which was the year before the United States had plunged itself into the Civil War. We have to stay abreast of these things, but we have to be able to do it in a way where we are not losing sight of what matters, and that we are not allowing these seedy elements to come forth and dislodge us, to place us in a difficult as well as untenable situation. But unfortunately, that's where we are right now. I don't foresee this improving at any point in the near future, because it's not. We're still running around like a bunch of chickens with our heads cut off without an understanding of what's going on in the world right now. Sorry, folks, I'm trying to adjust something here, and it's just not working with me. There we go. So everywhere we turn, in the land of the free and the home of the brave, we see that the troubles of these older things and these lingering problems and the divisiveness that has come to surround the entire political arena right now is threatening to engulf us. It is threatening to push us past the point of no return. And that is not something I wish to see come to fruition in this beloved republic of ours, just as I am sure it's not something you, our cherished listening passengers and audience members, want to see come to fruition in our beloved republic either. So what is it that we're facing? What is it that we can accomplish to overcome this? Because we have the full indictments out, and the general shape of the investigation into Manafort's activities, according to Bloomberg, has been known for months. The charges against Patapoulos were a revelation and indicate prosecutors are moving on multiple tracks. They are the most direct indication of coordination between the campaign and Russian officials. Well, irrespective of that, it's a sign that there was rank and rampant illegality going on with the people that Trump surrounded himself with. And so again, it brings into question all of these claims by the campaign and then later the administration and Trump himself that he only surrounds himself with the best people. Again, where was the vetting? Why was there no vetting process here? Why are we essentially running around in a circle, not gaining anything, not improving anything, just seeing things continue to fall apart as they have been? And see, here's the thing. Patapoulos, who worked for Trump's campaign from March 2016 to January of 2017, so after he was elected, was in frequent communication with a campaign supervisor and high-ranking official of the effort, according to court papers. So does this bugbear have the ability to gain legs, to start moving, to double down on the problems that we are encountering? The potential's there. And it's an ugly potential. It's an unsavory potential, to say the least. But what it also tells me, beyond a shadow of a doubt, is that this thing is only going to get worse. It is going to get bigger. It is not going to go away, as several senior administration officials would hope, because of the seriousness of this. And you know, it seems as though every prophetic prediction that we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, have made with respect to this entire debacle is coming forth, is unfurling exactly as we predicted that it would. And so that in and of itself kind of raises some significant and serious questions as to what we, as a political movement, philosophy, but above all ideology, ought to be doing at this given juncture in time. Because as it stands now, this ugly and seedy business is not going to improve. It's not going to relent. It's not going to let up. So what do? How do we preserve our ideology? Because we know that the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftist controlled Democrat Party is going to do everything within its power, whenever and wherever possible, to try and tar and feather us all with the broad proverbial brush. Well, they're all corrupt. Or they're all criminals. Otherwise, they wouldn't have availed themselves of the shroud of the Trump era. That's how they're going to try and play this. Is it intellectually disingenuous? Yes. But it should come as no surprise that our political adversaries on the exact and polar opposite end of the political spectrum in the land of the free and the home of the brave are going to attempt to utilize this to make political hay. They are masters of this. They have made an art out of it. And this is essentially a proverbial political goldmine for them. It is the gift that keeps on giving. And it shows no signs of relenting at any point within the foreseeable future. Folks, this is not the sort of thing we can ignore. It's not the sort of thing that we can turn a blind eye to. Why? Because if it is allowed to continue unchecked and unchallenged, then the problems that we are encountering will begin to engulf us. It will become a conflagration from which there is no escape, and it will have repercussions that will reverberate through the generations. As far as I'm concerned, that is something we can ill afford, particularly at this current juncture in time in the heart of the land of the free and the home of the brave, because our rights and liberties are in such dire straits. And because both sides of the political aisle have been engaging in this sort of chicanery in which they refuse to address the problems that have been holding back the good and decent people of these United States of America from coast to coast and border to border. And unless and until we are ready, willing, and able to actually sit down and address that, to be serious about the gravity of this situation and not just fall victim or prey to these claims of some grand conspiracy theory against the sitting president of the United States, this issue will only serve to further divide us and to create even greater problems for this constitutionally endowed federalist representative republic which we have come to know and love. It's frustrating. And perhaps that is the understatement of this entire program. It's frustrating. Yes, it is absolutely frustrating to have to keep going through this, to not find a resolution to it, because the resolution, it's not presenting itself. Instead of getting back to the Constitution, we're having to put out dumpster fire after dumpster fire. the acts, and this grand piece of political kabuki theater is terrible. It's trashy. And what I wish Donald Trump would be doing, instead of going out on Twitter, instead of doing this, let's let the pieces fall where they may, and let's get back to actually resolving the issues that are facing us, both as a nation and people. That would be the wise thing to do. That would be the thing that would basically bolster a sense of confidence from me in the sitting president of the United States. But I'm not seeing it. It's certainly not coming to the epicenter. It's not coming to the forefront. It's just more of the same. The usual garbage. The same nonsense and rhetoric. Repeated over and over again until it reaches the point of being ad nauseum. That's where we are. Those are the difficulties that we're encountering, and I hate to say it, but I don't foresee this getting better. We know that Mueller's not going to let up from his investigation. He's now getting close to finding flames where the smoke's pouring out of. But if we're going to have political attention deficit disorder, oh look, squirrel, then we're only going to be adding credence and credibility to our political adversaries as they become even more rabid than they were before. Again, this is something that is going to be nigh impossible to overcome. Because we continue to dig ourselves deeper, because we are allowing ourselves to be divided to such a major and significant degree. I wish it weren't the case. I wish that we could get past this. I wish that we could sit down and work this out and come up with a practicable as well as real-world solution. But we can't so long as the antics of bread and circuses continues to consume all of the oxygen in the upper echelons of our federal government. This insanity was completely and totally preventable. That is the tragedy of it all. It truly is. And we know that the media is, of course, going to have a field day with this. They've already been having a field day with it. But we know that there was a push to have a dossier from Hillary, or regarding Hillary, given to the Trump campaign at that time, where they were seeking political dirt, where they were hoping to make political hay out of it. So it was both sides playing this facetious game. But because we've allowed our modern system of American polity to devolve into a mere spectator sporting event, we're not seeing past that. We're not seeing that both of the two mainstay political parties in the heart of the land of the free and the home of the brave have essentially become flip sides of the same titular coin. But that's exactly what's happening. That's exactly the sort of issue that is unfurling before the shocked and horrified eyes of the nation. This should be a self-evident truth. And it's an inescapable self-evident truth. But we continue to put the political blinders on and continue to trudge forward as if nothing happened. The Independent put out, from the Washington AP, the latest on the investigation into possible coordination between Donald Trump's presidential campaign and Russia at 2:45 p.m. Eastern Time The Republican chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee is praising the Justice Department for enforcing a law that requires agents of foreign governments to register with the United States. Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley is reacting to the indictment of President Donald Trump's former campaign chairman Paul Manafort and associate Rick Gates on 12 counts, including acting as an unregistered foreign agent. The federal indictment from special counsel Robert Mueller charges the men funneled payments through foreign companies and bank accounts as part of political work in the Ukraine. So while, again, this isn't directly connected to Trump's campaign, we know that this continued up until the point that they were working there. And again, it comes back to that question of why was this not vetted? Why are we now seeing that this continued to occur unchecked, unchallenged? Inquiring minds want to know. We want to know why it is that the insanity continues despite all of the pleas and claims that he would surround himself with the best people, that he always had the bigliest, bestliest peopleists ever. That sort of puffery managed to bamboozle quite a few people. And this is the end result of it. This is the negative campaign that continues unabated. And the more I think about it, the more and more I'm convinced that this isn't going to get better anytime soon. That we are not going to see the interest that we have as true dyed-in-the-wool constitutional compositionists be addressed. Oh, it's not sensational enough. It's not big enough for this. Grassley, according to the Independent, has long prodded the government to better enforce the law called the Foreign Agents Registration Act. He said it should be enforced fairly and consistently regardless of politics or any other factor. Grassley's panel is investigating Russian meddling in the 2016 election. At 2:10 p.m., former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort and his business associate Rick Gates have pleaded not guilty following their arrest on charges related to conspiracy against the United States and other felonies. The charges are the first from the special counsel investigating possible coordination between the Trump campaign and Russia. So you see, this isn't going away. Conspiracy against the United States. That's not good. It's not good. It's not going to play out well for us. It is just going to continue to be the muck and row that we have seen time and again in repeated fashion with respect to all of this. And why? Why? That question right there, dear cherished listening passengers and audience members, is the one that ought to be answered. But I wouldn't hold my breath if I were you, waiting for an answer to come forth, waiting for the truth to be brought forth in one fell swoop, because it's not going to be. This will meander on. It will drag out, and it will be detrimental to our chances in that looming and lingering 2018 congressional midterm election that is just around the corner. At 2:01 p.m. earlier, a White House spokeswoman says President Donald Trump is not planning any changes with special counsel Robert Mueller, because we know that that had been discussed as a potential thing. Again, all of the impropriety, all of the instability, all of the insecurity that is pouring forth from this White House in regards to this issue that is following him around like a shadow, it's not going to improve. The challenges that are there are there. And I do not foresee them going away. I do not foresee them improving. Jeremy and I were talking about Paul Manafort very early on. We were warning everyone that was getting all excited about Donald Trump, even at the early stages of the primary process, that, hey, there's some shady shenanigans and chicanery surrounding the campaign director for Donald J. Trump, Paul Manafort. He had these connections. It was known. If we could figure it out, why could Trump's staff and personnel in the vetting process not figure that out either? And of course, he did let him go once these allegations started swirling around Manafort, because it was the same thing with Corey Lewandowski, that he was let go as soon as controversy started to swirl around him and to follow him around. So again, all of this is there. All of this was predictable. All of this could and should have been foreseen. Yet for whatever reason, it wasn't. And so the cookie continues to crumble. We continue to see this issue getting bigger and bigger with each successive passing month. And I don't foresee it improving at any point within the foreseeable future, because it's only going to get worse. White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders responded Monday to a question about whether the president is considering firing Mueller. She said there is no intention or plan to make any changes in regards to special counsel. Sanders also said the White House expects the investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election to conclude soon. Now, how can they expect it to conclude soon? Interesting, maybe wishful thinking. I doubt they're in communication, because that in and of itself would lead to even more issues of the appearance of impropriety. And if you have the appearance of impropriety with an investigation on this scale, it is going to be absolutely damaging and devastating from a public relations standpoint, because it's going to create the perception of impropriety. And in this modern arena of American politics, perception oftentimes matters more than reality itself, irrespective of whether it's true or not. And that's why the Republican Party is always operating at a disadvantage. It's why we always come into it on the defensive, because we are not good masters at PR. Now, Trump is good at manipulating things, throwing so much stuff out there that it just tears everybody in opposite directions, but that in and of itself sort of distracts away from the fact that, where's the border wall? It hasn't been built. Obamacare is still there. The tax reforms that they're talking about is not really going to lessen the burden on so many American people. Issue after issue, broken promise after broken promise. That is what continues to fester in the body politique of the land of the free and the home of the brave. And unless and until we are ready, willing, and able to address this in a serious fashion, it is going to get worse. I wish that weren't the case. I wish I had words of comfort and solace to convey to you as I sit here speaking into this microphone, addressing you, our cherished listening passengers and audience members. But no such words of comfort or solace come to the surface, because we see that time and again we're repeating the same song and dance, the same act of this grand political kabuki theater, despite the fact that it has become so threadbare, so obnoxious, so repetitive, mundane, and monotonous, plays out. And we go forth and divide ourselves as though we are at a spectator sporting event. It'll be interesting to see how this unfolds and what it holds for the future. But we, in our individual capacity as United States citizens, need to start demanding delivery on the issues that matter. Otherwise, it's just more of the same. And I, for one, am sick and tired of more of the same. Just as I'm sure each and every one of you is sick and tired of more of the same as well. So we have to foster a fluent and working knowledge and understanding of our shared United States Constitution and thereby our fundamental and inalienable rights so that we can see through all of this and begin to bring this nation back to a modicum of sanity. Now, with that said, it is time for us to begin our descent. I'm going to go ahead and send the flight attendant back with one last round of alcohol. If she offers you vodka, you might want to push her out of the plane because she's colluding with Russian agents or something of that sort. As always, folks, I'm your captain, Randy Wright, and I want to thank you for tuning in to this Solo Flight special edition of our state-of-the-art program. Should you have any questions, comments, concerns, or even topic suggestions, please feel free to leave them either in the comment section here on our YouTube page or on our Google Plus page or even on our Facebook page. And on top of this, I invite you to follow us over on Twitter with the Twitter handle @RadioAviationEX. One more time, ladies and gentlemen, that's @RadioAviationEX. And there you will find the departure board that lists my personal Twitter account, as well as the personal Twitter account of my first officer, Jeremy Grapenton. You will find the Blogspot account that is just chock full of useful information. And you will also find, just as you'll find linked here, the link to our Cafe Press account. Folks, at the Cafe Press account, we have all sorts of novelty items, trinkets, and goodies, either with our original Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer logo on it, or our First Class Passenger logo on it, or even the two Uplifting America logos on it, because let's face it, in dark and dire times such as these, America could really be uplifted. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Randy Wright, and I want to thank you for joining us today. I hope to see you again next time. Please do take care.